now we're on to episode 3 of season 2, and of course we're going to get spoilery, so you're aware. So, going into the end of the world, that title means so many things at this point. We are getting to that point where we're in the kind of the middle of the season now, which, like we've been talking about, since there's only 7 episodes, we get to this point a lot quicker than we usually do. But it does feel like so much is already built up to this point that this is kind of this isn't the big turning point, but the big turning point is clearly coming, where we kind of reach the midway point where something likely very drastic is going to happen and send us in a totally, possibly different direction, or at least a more intense direction, as things are going to start to get more out of control, because we were just talking about last week's episode about how either the people have already been long since in a downward spiral, or they're just starting theirs, or they're right in the middle of it. And all these things are likely going to converge very, very soon. The question is at which point in next week's episode is it going to be? Like, is it going to be right off? Is it going to be throughout the episode? Or is there going to be some giant cliffhanger till the episode after that at the end of it? It's really hard to say before we get ahead of ourselves. We do have this episode where I do think the episodes have had a consistent strength ever since season 1, which obviously in the later episodes getting bigger, but as far as having another starting point here and starting over again in regards to what exactly the line looks like. We do have a lot of moments here where everything's kind of laid out and is very on the nose, whether it be in the dialogue or Madeline's speech or any of that stuff. But I actually think that'd probably be a criticism anywhere else, but I do think that it's actually warranted at this point, because it feels like this is, like, since we're leading up to whatever big thing is probably going to happen very soon, or at least set something off to where we're going to end in just fireworks of some sort. So it feels more like a jumping off point, kind of setting it all up. It's like basically like making sure we're caught up to where they're at, so that they can start dropping, even bigger bombshells on us than they already have. And while they're doing this, they're also throwing in, I guess you could say, topical things, which, given how it's done, could be off-putting in a certain way if it seems maybe too preachy or too, like, on the nose or whatever. But they're throwing stuff in like climate change and victim blaming and stuff like that, which more or less fits itself kind of perfectly into the story, particularly with the whole victim blaming aspect with Jane's story, and how Mary Louise approaches her, where she kind of has that way about her that she'll do or believe anything to believe that Perry was this, perfect son of hers, when he so clearly wasn't. And that's the thing about the strength that Streep is bringing here, because you wouldn't think that bringing in a new character in a new season, that they would kind of be more of a flashy supporting character. And while that is what Mary Louise is, it is interesting how she's kind of slowly becoming more and more the center of it as it goes on. Particularly with the way that she's really starting to interact with all the characters at this point, and of course, now that she's becoming more and more aware that all of them, like, there's something that's piecing together, especially when she goes to see the detective to try to get more pieces to put together. And she gets to confront Jane, she gets to confront Renata in passing, but still, both of which they deal in ways very suited to their characters. Even though Streep is kind of becoming the heart of this season, I'm still find myself mainly drawn to whenever Laura Dern is on screen. Regardless of how on the side her whole thing might seem compared to the others. But there's just something, like when we get, to the end of the year, like anything Laura Dern is up for, she should be sweeping again. And it's one of those characters where every time I see her, and every time she says a new sentence, I feel like that I should really, really hate her, just absolutely hate her to her core. And in a sense, I can't bring myself to do it, even with lines, and every time she gives us more of a reason to hate her, the more drawn to that character I am, and the more entertaining she becomes, which is the beautiful thing about Durant's performance. Right before that scene ends, when they're in the hospital, she tells Gordon to not even talk to Amabella. Is just a thing of beauty, that whole performance. But the thing here with Shreve that she has going on is that she's starting to have, the closer she gets to it, and this is where I think we're going to have kind of the big sort of center thing that happens in the next episode, or at least to a degree, is the fact that she's getting closer. The closer and closer that she gets to finding out the truth, the more power that's going to give her. And I don't know that Mary Louise is a character that we want with a lot of power, assuming we're on the side of all the major characters. So, but that's what makes it so interesting and exciting to see that those directions feel like they're coming, and then where they're going to go from there. Because there's also sometimes it feels like she has a hold on Celeste. Sometimes it feels like Celeste is under control herself, because I talked about in the first episode when it seemed like she was succumbing to the good memories of Perry. Then in the second episode, she was kind of starting to confront the bad and starting to realize that she needs to take action if her kids are going to not become something like him. And now you add those two together, and now it's like she's found herself on like a middle ground where she's combating between those two things. And there's clearly a side that she wants to take, but there is something combating inside her to where it's like she knows the truth, but it's almost like she can't quite get past the whole sort of denial of it, I guess you could say. So it's like with Celeste sort of bouncing around each episode, really, and once again, that's something else that sounds like it would be a criticism in another context. But it's like it's so believable either way, and the fact that she can be that conflicted, especially with Mary Louise here, sort of, trying to push her in one direction, and then she's got Madeline's support on the other side, and so there's no way Celeste couldn't be all over the place at this point, and Kidman's really been playing that perfectly. Even so far as to the point that when the therapist compared her to the veterans that feel like their version of normal is out there instead of home, and I thought that was a really interesting comparison, and especially with the way they're incorporating the Perry flashbacks, and also the scene with all the home videos, where Celeste looks like she might be going in a direction that's really not going to be good for her, where there's grieving, and then there's going down the rabbit hole that Celeste looks like she might be going down, and the question is what's down there when she gets there, and the fact that there's kind of this mystery surrounding that, because she could be one or the other at any given time, is going to make her really interesting to watch for the rest of the way. And I was also kind of wondering about those videos. Like, it was the scene when they were, Streep was with the kids, and they were going through all of them, and we saw all the different videos there was. And for a second, I started to wonder if there was going to somehow be something that was, like, inadvertently captured, like there's something incriminating in there they're going to accidentally come across. But I do think it's probably mainly just to show the sort of attachment that Celeste still has, that all of that stuff still remains in memory of him. So, but yeah, there is still every now and then that there's little things where like I almost wonder if I'm getting too paranoid. Like the whole Corey thing, I think is his name, Jane's new boyfriend. Where the past couple of videos I've been saying that I wasn't sure that I trusted him for some reason that I can't quite pinpoint. But he does seem to be, I feel like, and this is the thing too, is I feel like just as we had the whole hug thing, and there's like the real innocence, and he understands her boundaries, and he doesn't get pissed off when she rejects the kiss. So it's like, yeah, he's probably trustworthy, and I should probably get rid of this thing that's still making me unsure about him. But yeah, I'm sure that'll be fine. Where it's like, because the thing is I was afraid that Jane was too happy, and that she's going to have another downfall, unfortunately. And that might be it, but it seems more so the downfall is going to be Mary Louise bringing her past back to her, because the whole thing was how I said, it's like she seemed to have found peace in Perry's death, and Mary Louise is just bringing all that back, maybe even twofold with the way how confrontational she is about it. and how unwilling she is to believe Jane that that's exactly what happened. So yeah, so I think now that we've pinpointed where Jane's sort of conflict is going to be, Corey is probably more of her. Her life kind of has a balance where she'll have one place to go if she doesn't have the other. So yeah, I think I can start trusting him now. And I do also like the way, as big of a threat as Mary Louise somewhat is now, and probably definitely will be later, I still like the way the characters just don't really take any of her shit. How they don't really let them walk all over. Even Jane was like immediately like shutting her shit down when she was confronted with that. And Renata didn't seem to be having any of it. Renata doesn't seem to have much of anybody's shit. So there's the whole thing. The thing that's really weird about Mary Louise also, and I think is kind of a nice way to build up the sort of paranoia of knowing something you're probably not supposed to, and the fear of getting caught. And the way they seem to play that up with the fact that Mary Louise just seems to be everywhere. She can just seemingly materialize in any place one of these characters is, and be ready to confront them or stare from a distance. So I think that's a really nice confronting way to kind of show that paranoia that they have about knowing what they know and what they're hiding. So yeah, all the stuff going on with Sue's character is gonna only get bigger from here, I imagine, and that they've got an actress like her. When these scenes get big, I cannot wait for that to happen, because these scenes are probably gonna get big. I can also see this taking more of a downplayed approach. I do think it's gonna be something big regardless, but whether they go the full fireworks route or maybe they downplay it a little more, and maybe play a bit more with I don't know if a suspense angle would be the right thing, but something. To where obviously we knew that the first season was bubbling up to what would ultimately be a death, and we knew that the whole season. Like we were talking about in the first video, this one has the mystery around it to where we don't know what the destination is this time, which is really intriguing and really leaves that mystery open to where it feels like just about anything can happen. Especially since we kind of had an idea, we got little clues throughout season 1 of who was still alive. By the end, like we would see occasional glimpses of somebody at trivia night being questioned or whatever. And in this one, we have kind of no idea whatsoever. And the idea that Mary Louise is becoming such this big part is also interesting, the way they're playing with the theme now of basically like a distrust in parents. Because obviously there's Madeline's speech where it's like, how far do we lie to our kids and all that, but there was also, there's the thing with Bonnie's mom where we were introduced to her in the last episode, and it was like there was something off there, and then there were the whole flashes of water thing that I wasn't sure exactly what exactly they were trying to prove, but then we get this shot of her, like, what dumping her in the water unexpectedly, which is followed up very closely by Madeline's story about how her parents' marriage fell apart and how she had to keep her dad's secret when she saw something that she wasn't supposed to. Which in turn, that goes on the whole parents thing of the whole distrust in parents thing, but then there's also this thing with what's going on with her and Ed now, which I was wondering if Adam Scott was going to even be in this episode after the end of the second one. But yeah, they're really confronting this like head on right away, doing the whole therapy thing, which of course has the eerie resemblance to the one time that Perry went with Celeste to therapy. Even though we know this isn't near as much of a volatile relationship, still there's just that eerie familiarity for a second. But there was also the whole thing where it's this whole thing about her parents is something that we just learned about Madeline. And it's almost like, in that instance, we kind of feel the way Ed felt, where it's like, oh my god, Madeline, we thought we knew you, and now you're starting to reveal shit that we didn't know, not even in season 1. It's like, what else about Madeline do we not know? And it's like, is it only, as far as us as an audience, is Ed not the only one that she's keeping secrets from? And then there was that. And I also did, once again, on the nose, but I still kind of liked that whole technique where Ed was at the back of the room when she was giving her big speech, and then we get the one cut where the room's empty except for Ed, like it's singling him out. but still, I still kind of like the way they embrace those techniques, just to kind of add that, more of a flair to it, even if it does feel like very, very on the nose. But in a scene in itself that's very on the nose already, that was just like the over the top cherry on top. But in this show, we almost kind of welcome that because it just kind of fits the characters really. So even despite the fact that we are seeing like it feels like it fits them exactly, while at the same time we're watching Madeline's facade fall, which is really interesting. So yeah, so I really just love, like I've been saying, I just really love following these characters in general, um, and the way that they're. I was wondering about towards the beginning another Bonnie thing. Where it's like one of the more interesting aspects that they're really not showing us much of at all, is exactly. I mean, they're showing us enough to get the point about how Bonnie is after everything that happened, given her participation in it. But it still feels like there's something about Bonnie that they're hiding from us. Like, it feels like we're seeing enough to get the feeling of her, but there feels like there's something else, especially when they showed us the scene again after Perry had just fallen, and it was a scene I don't believe we'd ever seen before, where they all turn to Bonnie and, like, say whatever they say. We don't know. But it's like I feel like they're gradually revealing something. I'm not sure what that would be, if it's in that particular moment right after Perry's death, or if it came later. But I do feel like there's something about Bonnie that they're really shrouding. And if that's gonna have anything to do with her mom, or if her mom's just more of a sort of us kind of getting in Bonnie's mindset kind of thing. Either way, I'm curious to see where else that goes, because I feel like there's something really big going on with Bonnie. So I don't, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly where they're gonna take that. But yeah, and then if there is the next episode, I usually don't try to look at anything ahead of time, but I saw that the next episode is named She Knows. And it's like, there's so many, once, like, sort of like the end of the world, there's so many things that can mean, and it's like, I feel like it's inevitable. I'm just trying to figure out what would be the consequences of Mary Louise finding out specifically that Bonnie's the one that pushed him, and what kind of confrontation that would result in. And that's why this show is so fucking exciting, and especially the fact that we're getting to the halfway point, and the next episode is called She Knows. This shit's gonna blow up really soon. I don't think it's gonna wait. So that's basically where we leave it until we get to the next episode, where the shit is probably going to enormously hit the fan. And yes, so that's, I guess, where we're going to leave that for now. So obviously coming up, we're going to have more reviews, like the new Child's Play, which I just saw, which is kind of amazing, and I can't wait to talk about it. And then Annabelle and Yesterday should be Friday's video, and then another Versus I already shot with my brother, and when this comes back around. So, and all that other stuff that was kind of somewhat planned to probably just pop up within the middle of weeks or something. So until all of that stuff, and until next week, I think that's it for this.